there exists a deeply embedded mythology in professional sports surrounding the final moments of a closely contested game. When the shot clock winds down and the entire outcome balances on a single possession, the camera almost always drifts toward the sideline. We watch the head coach urgently sketching diagrams on a whiteboard while exhausted players hang on every syllable. When the team executes the play and the ball drops through the net, the immediate instinct from mainstream medias is to hand full credit to the coaching staff for a tactical stroke of genius. The story becomes about the brilliant design, the precise execution, and the overarching vision of the person holding the marker. But what happens when the players on the floor decide to break from the script entirely? What happens when a member of the locker room picks up their phone and uses social media to completely shatter the illusion of coaching competence? Today, we are breaking down a significant revelation that exposes the genuine dysfunction operating inside the Indiana Fever organization. We are examining how a single Instagram post from Sophie Cunningham publicly embarrassed head coach Stephanie White and confirmed what analytically minded basketball observers had suspected all along. The historic game-winning Logo 3 from Caitlin Clark was never part of the plan. The final play was drawn up for Kelsey Mitchell. To fully appreciate the weight of this revelation, we need to first examine the psychology of the locker room. Inside any professional sports environment, there is a strict hierarchy and an unspoken code of silence surrounding the inner workings of the huddle. You do not expose the playbook, and you absolutely do not reveal the intentions of the head coach to the outside world. However, the Indiana Fever are currently operating inside a state of ongoing chaos. The tension surrounding offensive hierarchy and the clear mismanagement of the franchise cornerstone has been building toward an inevitable breaking point. Sophie Cunningham, a player well known for her direct nature and complete refusal to deliver media-trained answers, has effectively become the whistleblower for this entire situation. The initial suspicion surrounding the final play design did not emerge from rumors or speculation. It emerged from studying the physical footage of the game. When you watch that final possession develop, the spatial positioning of the players immediately raises questions. The primary action, the screen being set, and the timing of the inbound pass all pointed toward an isolation set, being run for the veteran guard. Listen to this breakdown analyzing the precise sequence of events and tracking the movements that first ignited the debate about who the actual intended target of the play was.
Cunningham, because Sophie Cunningham wasted no time today poking fun at the entire Fever organization. Oh, yes, because yesterday when I was on live, and shout out to you guys that tuned into that live, I say, man, is it me? But does it look like this play was designed for Kelsey Mitchell? Because we see Kelsey Mitchell go to the right, get hemmed up, go to the left. Sophie, and nah, I ain't even finna wait for you to get open. Here, Caitlin. And that's exactly what she did. And I'm telling you right now, Sophie Cunningham saved the day. Oh, and
the visual evidence was compelling, but visual evidence in basketball is frequently open to interpretation. A coaching staff can comfortably defend a broken play by arguing the defense disrupted the primary action and forced the players into secondary reads. They can maintain the illusion that they retained complete control over the offensive execution at all times. That illusion survived for exactly 24 hours until Sophie Cunningham stepped onto Instagram and proceeded to dismantle it entirely. In the modern sports landscape, social media is not simply a platform for personal branding. It is a mechanism for shaping and controlling the narrative in real time. Athletes understand precisely what they are communicating when they choose to share specific images and specific words. Cunningham did not simply post a generic celebration of a team victory. She posted a carefully assembled and specific sequence of images that functioned as a direct indictment of the coaching staff's original game plan. Watch the documentation of this social media activity, paying close attention to the exact language used and the subsequent reactions from her teammates that validated the entire theory.
Today on Sophie Cunningham Instagram, she took time to reflect. And when I tell you reflect, she reflected on last night's game. Now, Sophie caption is, "Your life seems so fun. Thanks, my family used to have a conversation of how to deal with me." Now, this is Sophie Cunningham. Caitlin is soonly, definitely posted this. Caitlin said, "Love you, Soph. Twin. Crazy that you cropped me out. But watch this.
The opening images established the tone of quiet rebellion, but it was the final image in her sequence that delivered the decisive blow to Stephanie White's credibility. Cunningham shared a fan-created meme that explicitly spelled out the reality of what had taken place inside that huddle. This was not a subtle suggestion or a carefully coded message. This was a direct and undeniable confirmation that the players on the floor looked at the play the coaching staff had designed, identified its fundamental flaws in real time, and made a collective decision to abandon it entirely in favor of finding their best shooter. Listen to the exact wording of the post that Cunningham chose to broadcast to the entire basketball world.
Keep watching. Didn't follow the plan. Worth it. We may have improvised. Oops, you followed the right plan. Won anyway, 78-76. Sophie Cunningham has confirmed that this play right here was not designed for Caitlin. So
all we may have improvised. Oops. That single word, oops, represents perhaps the most pointed expression of disrespect toward a coaching philosophy that has consistently failed to maximize the talent available on this roster. It is a public declaration that the players trust their own collective judgment far more than they trust the directives arriving from the sideline. When we return to the footage, armed with this confirmation, the mechanics of that final play transform from a standard basketball highlight into something that functions almost like a psychological study. You can identify the precise moment the script gets discarded. You can observe the expectations of the coaching staff colliding directly with the reality of how the players chose to execute. Watch the body language of Kelsey Mitchell at the exact instant the ball leaves the shooter's hands. Her physical reaction represents the final piece of undeniable evidence in this entire investigation.
Pull it all the way up. Look, it is 0.4 seconds left. Let's play it. So, if you guys can see here, there's Kelsey Mitchell. She's doubled. Now, Kelsey turned around, and I knew I wasn't tripping because Kelsey turned around so fast, like, damn, I was supposed to get the ball. Open.
Mitchell spins around sharply, hands positioned and ready to receive the basketball, fully expecting to be the central figure in the final action. She was the intended target of Stephanie White's whiteboard design. The fact that the coaching staff in a one-point game with the season effectively hanging in the balance chose to construct an isolation play for a heavily guarded veteran rather than utilizing the unprecedented shooting gravity of their generational point guard is a remarkable indictment of their tactical awareness. Sophie Cunningham reading the situation, ignoring the primary action, and locating Caitlin Clark standing on the logo was not simply a sound basketball decision. It was an act of organizational defiance. It was a player recognizing in real time that the established hierarchy was steering them directly toward defeat and choosing to step around that hierarchy to secure a victory. This internal conflict, this continuous friction between a coach attempting to impose a rigid traditional system and a player whose very presence demands structural evolution, places an extraordinary burden on the athlete at the center of it. Caitlin Clark is not simply trying to manage the physical demands of professional basketball. She is attempting to carry a franchise that actively resists the adjustments necessary to properly support her. To fully grasp the weight of that responsibility, we need to look toward the legends of the game who have walked this identical path before. Cynthia Cooper is not merely a former player. She is a foundational figure in the history of the WNBA. She understands the suffocating pressure of carrying a franchise entirely on her shoulders, the isolation that comes with being the primary defensive target for every opponent night after night, and the deep frustration of operating inside an environment that does not fully understand how to make the most of what she offers. During a recent conversation, Cooper delivered a profoundly thoughtful analysis of the current situation in Indiana. She cut through all of the media noise and addressed the raw human reality of being a transcendent talent trapped inside a system that is not built around her.
So I know there's a lot of pressure on Caitlin, and I know she's not always reacting in the way she would want to. But, I give her grace. Honestly, I give her grace because I've been in that situation. I've been in a situation where everything is on your shoulders and you don't feel like you're getting a call or and I've reacted different ways. But the difference is I didn't have all the cameras on me. I didn't have everybody watching my every move. And so, it's a little, bittersweet.
Cooper speaks about extending grace. She acknowledges the emotional reactions, the mounting frustration, and the sheer exhaustion that comes from having every single movement placed under a microscope by a relentless media machine. When a player is simultaneously battling the opposing defense, absorbing physical punishment that officials choose not to address, and navigating the tactical limitations of her own coaching staff, emotional outbursts are not evidence of immaturity. They are the visible sign of a fiercely competitive spirit being pushed all the way to its absolute limit. The structural demands placed on a franchise player are enormous. They are expected to be the offensive engine, the primary distributor, the centerpiece of every marketing campaign, and the emotional anchor of the entire locker room. But what happens when the infrastructure surrounding that player is fundamentally broken? What happens when the head coach draws up a game-winning play that deliberately excludes the single most dangerous weapon available on the floor? The player is left with no choice but to depend on the rebellion of her teammates. The exercise of drawing comparisons between athletes across different eras and different sports is often a flawed one, leaning heavily on exaggeration rather than genuine analytical substance. However, when the task is assessing the true impact of Caitlin Clark, traditional basketball comparisons fall noticeably short. You cannot evaluate her solely against other guards in the history of the WNBA because no other guard has triggered this precise type of economic and cultural transformation. To locate an accurate historical parallel, you are required to look entirely outside the boundaries of the basketball court. Listen to this historical framing that attempts to measure the true scale of what she represents to the sport.
Better, it'll get easier, and her game will rise to the top because that's what Cream does. It rises to the top, and she's going to get over this tough moment right now.
Shout out to In Case You Missed It podcast. Now, when I was on live set last night, somebody said Caitlin Clark isn't Michael Jordan. She isn't Larry Bird. She isn't Tiger Woods. But the right analogy and comparison of player is that Caitlin Clark is none other than baseball legend Babe Ruth. And I really got to thinking, and I say, damn, she brought the world to
The Babe Ruth comparison is not about matching statistics. It is about identifying a figure who single-handedly altered the trajectory, the cultural reach, and the financial architecture of an entire sporting institution. Ruth transformed the geometry of baseball by making the home run the centerpiece of the game. Clark is transforming the geometry of basketball by normalizing the 30-foot jump shot as a legitimate and expected weapon. But Babe Ruth never had to fight against his own manager simply for the right to step up to the plate. He was never used as a decoy in the bottom of the ninth to protect the feelings of a veteran teammate. The Indiana Fever possess the single most significant catalyst in the history of women's sports, and their head coach is persistently working to push her into a secondary role. The information provided by Sophie Cunningham is the clearest possible evidence that validates every criticism directed at Stephanie White throughout this season. It strips away all remaining ambiguity. When the game was truly on the line, the coaching staff lacked either the vision, the courage, or perhaps the willingness to put the basketball in the hands of their most capable player. They designed a play to deliver the ball to Kelsey Mitchell, and the players on the floor were forced to actively disregard those instructions in order to save the game. This dynamic is completely unsustainable over any meaningful stretch of time. A professional basketball organization cannot function as a democracy where the players routinely vote to override the coaching staff during timeouts. Eventually, the structural foundation gives way entirely. The Indiana Fever front office faces a definitive decision. They can continue employing a coaching staff that is fundamentally disconnected from the reality of the roster they are working with, leaning on the improvisational intelligence of the players to paper over the tactical failures. Or they can acknowledge the unmistakable message being sent directly from their own locker room, remove the obstacle on the sideline, and construct an offensive system that genuinely reflects the generational talent they selected with their draft pick. The footage does not lie, and thanks to the unfiltered honesty of players like Sophie Cunningham, the internal reality of the huddle no longer lies either. The illusion of the coaching masterclass has been completely and permanently dismantled. The game-winning Logo 3 will appear in highlight packages for the next 10 years. But the true meaning of that shot is the undeniable proof that Caitlin Clark succeeds not because of what the Indiana Fever system provides her, but entirely in spite of it. If you value deep and methodical analysis of the mechanics and psychology of professional basketball, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We do not accept mainstream narratives without pulling the footage and verifying what actually happened. Drop your perspective in the comments below. Does the confirmation that the final play was designed for Kelsey Mitchell effectively seal the fate of Stephanie White? And how much longer can this roster sustain this level of internal division before something breaks? I will see you in the next breakdown.